As the years go slowly passing, the world continues to change. And I have changed along with it. I've lived through some of the most infamous times in history, through the 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way to the 2000s. After so many years of darkness, I have finally found the light. The light at the end of my tunnel with my children and a husband that I love. But that's not the way it always was. No. My story started somewhere completely different. In a place that was empty and dark. I was born on October 7th in the year of 1922. The roaring 20s, flappers, jazz music, and the creation of some of the most classic Hollywood movies. It was a time of prosperity, but for me and my 4 brothers, it was a time of neglect and starvation. While my parents were out dancing and enjoying life with the few resources they had, their 5 children stayed at home with nothing to eat. But that was nothing compared to when they would leave for weeks at a time to work odd jobs. My brother and I would look around the house, desperately trying to find any kind of food. By the time the social worker came for us, they found us eating raw potatoes on the floor. For kids like us, there were only 2 options. Either a family member took you in, or you went to the orphanage. Family members would give you food and housing if you could work and earn your living, or if you were cute and under the age of 5. Most of my brothers ended up in a state orphanage. As for me, I was sent to live with my Uncle Harry, my father's brother. I was 8 years old, so I had passed the age of cuteness, and I was still young enough so I couldn't do jobs that were too difficult. Why they took me in? It was the first tiny miracle I had experienced in my life. I had never met my uncle before, so to me, he was a strange man. But soon he would be so much more. Uncle Harry was married to a woman called Lucille. Robert was their infant son, who sadly suffered from several health issues. For a short time, they became my family. I finally had a stable home with 3 meals a day, a warm bed, and all the toys girls back then used to have. Memories from that time include me being outside and running through all the beautiful, tall pine trees surrounding the house. I finally felt happy and free. During that time, Uncle Harry became the coach of a city baseball team. I became the mascot, water girl, bat girl, and did any other job they would give me. I just loved to go with him to the games. My uncle was slowly taking the place of my dad. I might have called him my uncle, but in my heart, he was everything I could have wanted in a father. He meant the world to me. I was quite a talkative child, which would often lead me to trouble at school. My uncle didn't like this, and his punishment for my behavior was that I could not attend one of his team's games. I was so mad, and I don't know what came over me, but I told him that I hoped he would break a leg sliding into a base. That night, he came home with his hand bandaged up. He broke 2 fingers sliding into second base. Instead of showing him how bad I felt, I said, "I told you so." Let's just say after that, I went to all the games. I don't know if he was afraid of my power, or if I just started behaving better. But what I told him that day stayed with me because on September 2nd, 1934, my uncle died in a car accident. My life was completely shattered. The person I loved the most, and the only person who I thought cared for me, was dead. I was devastated, not only because he was killed, but also because I thought I had caused it. This was not too long after I told him I hoped he would break a leg. Soon enough, Lucille could not keep me anymore. Robert was getting sicker, and she had to move away. So I ended up in the last place I wanted to be. The orphanage. I often think about what life would have been like if my uncle wouldn't have died. I would have grown up in a home with people who loved me, and that alone would have prevented me from some of the mistakes I made in the future. But sadly, this wasn't the case. I will never forget my first day at Cottage 12. I sat in front of a big window, looking at the snow falling as my tears began to slide down my cheeks. I was all alone. When an assistant matron saw this, she turned me around and said, "We don't allow crying here. You are here because nobody wants you, and we don't want you either, but we are stuck with you." These words have stuck in my mind ever since. I was not wanted or loved by anyone. This was when my life went into a very dark tunnel. After 3 weeks, I was moved to Cottage 13 with 24 other girls aged 6 to 13. In the cottage, there was a head matron who constantly kept an eye on us and our belongings, and there were 2 assistants who were responsible for discipline. Discipline included many chores. We had to keep the cottage clean, spending hours polishing the wood floors on our hands and knees. Each cottage had specific chores. Some would make bread, take care of the livestock, tend gardens, do the laundry, and work in the baby nursery. There was no time to have a childhood. But the worst kind of discipline was the physical kind. Pretty soon, my personality started to change. I went from a lively, outgoing child to a fearful, quiet one. I was in a constant state of fear, not wanting to say or do the wrong thing to avoid punishment. No child should live with this kind of fear. I dreamed of having a mother at this time. I wanted one so badly. I wanted to have someone who would tuck me in and tell me that it was all going to be okay. I was so desperate that I would have taken any woman off the street who would have allowed me to call her mother.